as doctors, we're servicemen in that we make money based on how much time we can put into whatever we're doing. We're trained to be empathetic and sympathetic and nice, and the business world is not like that. There is this big fallacy that being a startup is exciting and fun and easy, but you got to remember you only see and hear about the successful ones. Don't take advice from someone who isn't in the position that you don't want to be in the future.
Final question. Would you continue doing medicine if you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars from your side hustle? So, Anu, thank you for the very informational and inspirational session beforehand. Let's talk a bit about your life outside of medicine then. I heard that you run a business. Is that right?
Yeah, I just started a business. So over the last year or so, I've been developing an app, which has kind of turned into a side hustle / business called StatDoctor. The aim of the kind of product is it's a marketplace between hospitals and doctors. So when you aren't employed full-time by a hospital, you either can be on casual contracts or you can locum. And being a locum is like a sole trader. You work as yourself and you get employed by the hospital on short-term contracts. The way it works at the moment is the only way to locum around Australia is through locum agencies. So you have to sign up to one of the 100+ agencies around Australia. Then they find shifts around the country, then advertise it to you. You apply through the locum agency to the hospital. And it's extremely time-consuming, cumbersome, inefficient, and it costs the hospital 20% of your locum rate. So I had a few issues with my locum agencies. I can go into those in a bit. But essentially I had so many issues, I decided to start locuming independent of an agency. So I'd call hospitals up directly and I'd offer my services, give all my documents and my references, and then they'd give me a contract. And I found I was making $10, $20, $30 an hour more than if I'd gone through an agency because the hospital didn't have to pay the agency fee. So I helped a few of my friends do the same. And then I kind of came up with this idea of, could I make this into a business allowing hospitals to create profiles and advertise shifts, doctors create profiles and hire? It's like a Seek or an Indeed specific for locuming throughout Australia and New Zealand. And so
it's kind of like hooking up the hospital and the clients, which is the locum doctors.
Absolutely. It's trying to remove the middleman of the agency using technology is the way to think about it.
Oh wow, they're definitely coming for you now, man. They're definitely coming for you.
They will be, and they already have tried a little bit. And we've got a few. We've kind of finished the product about a month ago, and so the app's now live on the app stores. And we're just kind of working through a few of the bugs and things. And a couple of hospitals have signed up and have started advertising shifts. So pretty exciting.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
It's called StatDoctor. STAT Doctor.
Yep. Doctor. And so is it more of a blue ocean when you first looked into this idea? When I said blue ocean, I mean like a market where there's no competitors.
There's no competitors. Well, there was no competitors. A few people doing similar things. There are a couple of companies who do a marketplace between locum agencies and doctors. But the issue is that just adds in a second middleman, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you're taking a cut of the cut. My problem was the cut itself. And this is not necessarily a business meant to generate millions of dollars or anything. It's a business trying to remove an inefficient situation that was really affecting and negatively kind of impacting hospitals and doctors. So I found the need for them unnecessary. So that was where the kind of idea came from.
Yeah, completely. So how do you guys sort of make a profit from that then? Because in a sense that you're still the middleman, right? Because the app, in a sense, you're still the middleman trying to hook the client with the employer.
Yeah, so the product makes money through being like there's a like Seek, you pay a percentage of like a fixed fee of hiring the doctor, but we have kind of goals of creating subscription type payment models to try and save hospitals. So for example, the hospital I work at currently spent $1 million last year on locum agencies. So that's not the locum doctors, just the agency fees, $1 million. So in a crippling, crumbling healthcare system with not enough money, that's $1 million that isn't going to helping patients. It's purely administrative. So we reckon we can cut that by over 75% purely by using StatDoctor.
Nice. Yeah. That's very good problem solving there, coming in and solving a problem that can save lots of time and energy and money. How do you sort of balance it with your locum work?
Not well is the answer. Running a startup and working is really difficult.
I know.
But the startup doesn't pay at the moment. So in reality, the only money I'm making is as a doctor. And so I'm still working relatively a full-time job. I'm working about 50 hours a week in my kind of surgical registrar job. But then I spend every day outside the hospital working on the app and every weekend. So I know that you're in a similar position. I know lots of other people have side hustles and are trying to create businesses. It's a hard grind. And the more time and energy you can put into it. And I've got a business partner who's also working on it. And I have an advisor as well. And we've kind of gone through, now that we have the app ready, we've gotten through kind of the hump or the difficulty aspect of it. That was what was kind of taking most of my time. Now it's just marketing and sales, and we can hire people to do that for us.
Sure. And just to get a gauge of, from the day when you had the idea came up in your mind until now, how long has it been?
2 years.
2 years. Oh, I'm trying to. We'll get into this. I'm trying to start something similar as well, and it's literally just. It's been a month. It's nothing compared to you. It's just literally no man's land. Like, I don't know if you know what I mean by no man's land. It's literally just like all this work, all this research, all this sort of getting different co-founders and people, and there's just no result, and you don't know what's gonna happen.
Absolutely understand, and I think there's this big fallacy that being a startup is exciting and fun and easy, but you got to remember you only see and hear about the successful ones. You don't hear about the hours that go behind it and those that fail. So many of them fail, and most of them fail either because people don't understand the market, it's a bad product market fit, or they don't have the right people organizing it. And it takes a lot of I had another idea that I was working on before this, which was a device. It was a cell phone powered defibrillator with the aim that in your first aid kit at home you would have pads that could plug into most cell phones, and so you would have a defibrillator on you that could at least give one shock. And so I spent a bit of money trying to test the theory, hired an engineer, got through it, and kind of calculated the cost it would be to build this product and patent it and stuff. But I took a big kind of look at it about 6 months later, because there's another company that have made the world's cheapest defibrillator, which is like pocket size. It's called Celi AED. And it took it was a failed idea or attempt, because they've done they've done it for cheaper than I was going to be able to offer it for. And I think that sort of internal thinking is really hard to be like, hey, look, I put all this time and energy and money into something, but it's not there. I could have continued to pursue it, and I would have probably if I hadn't have come up with StatDoctor with next. But I think you have to be willing to think and fail to be a good startup entrepreneur.
Yeah, sure. So now you're working still locuming 50 hours a week as an actual doctor, and then would you say most of your time outside of work is dedicated to the startup?
Yeah,
or
definitely.
What do you mean by most? Like 80% of your time outside of work?
I play soccer, and then I do the startup. So I'm pretty lucky, and I should say this. The job I have at the moment is not super strenuous. So I get to do a little bit of StatDoctor at work. And so while I am working a kind of 50-hour-a-week full-time job, I'd say maybe 5 of those hours, 1 hour a day, I can almost put towards doing StatDoctor. We're a small rural hospital. We don't have much acute surgery. We do some, my theatre time is limited. So that's why I took this job for the year, because I knew I would have the ability to continue working on a startup. And now that I'm seeking investment, a lot of the investors have basically said they will invest, but they want me to stop working as a doctor. So that
Sorry, they won't let. Oh, sorry, they want you to stop working.
Yes, because then their investment is less risky, right? Because you'll dropped your career to focus on it. So if your pure monetary value is coming from this app, you're going to make it work. And so that has been a really tough sort of idea to come up, because I really like being a doctor. I want to be a surgeon, right? Yeah. So I'm only going to increase my hours of work and decrease my hours into the business. So my aim for this year is to get StatDoctor to a state where it's self-functioning, and then to hire people to do what the full-time work on the business, and then just kind of be like an equity shareholder and CEO.
True. So did you co-found this business with multiple other people?
It's my idea, but I have a co-founder, and we have kind of like a 50-50 stake. And then the people we hired to build the app, we got a discount on the app development, and we gave them 2%. So in reality, me and her, the co-founders, own 98%, so 49% together, and that person owns 2%, with an aim of raising probably in the next 6 months.
Sure. Yeah. And were you guys bootstrapping the business, like just not getting any equity and just getting it off the ground from nothing?
Yes, we're very lucky because we're both locums. We had a bit of extra cash. So that was the reason.
You guys are both doctors?
Yeah, she's a doctor as well, yeah. So we're both locums. We both knew the problem. We both experienced it. And we'd locum for 2 or 3 years each. And locuming is very monetarily fruitful if you're willing to put the time and energy in, 2 to 3 times more than the normal doctor's salary for the same amount of work. So we had enough cash and we have bootstrapped the entire thing essentially till now,
Sure. So it's just all your money and,
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you find working as a doctor or health professional beneficial in terms of building a startup?
I think it has its benefits and negatives. I think as doctors, we're trained to be empathetic and sympathetic and nice, and the business world is not like that. I found myself going into business meetings and sharing ideas, thinking that it was a kind of reciprocal environment, but business moguls, investors have no share in being nice to you or sympathetic to you or empathetic to you. And I think it was a bit of a steep learning curve when I first started approaching investors, doing the sales and marketing. It's a different sort of thinking. Yeah. But often people
put money.
Exactly. And you say, it's going to be beneficial because doctors, patients, and they don't care about that. They just want to know the bottom line. How are they going to make their profit from it? Yeah, there's some altruistic, it might help the healthcare system. So where is the money? Where is their return on investment coming? And so you have to be able to sell your product in that way, even if you have the most genuine of reasons to start it. You have to be able to sell it to an investor because they may not have the same reasons as you. But I also think some of the benefits is the way doctors are taught to think in terms of diagnosis and problem solving is really beneficial. That kind of it's the same with engineers, that structured way of thinking about having a problem. How can I find a solution to fix the problem? Means that I think a lot of doctors will and do make great entrepreneurs if they had the time and energy to do anything about it. Often the best conversations I've had about fixing the healthcare system have been with other doctors who have brilliant ideas. And I've been like, why don't you do something about it? And they go, I've got no time, or I'm on training programs, or I want to just... And it's so hard. And so it's a difficult thing.
Do you think working as a doctor in terms of the income side of things, the money side of things, do you think it's more stable and less risky in terms of building a startup?
Definitely. Being a doctor is the stablest job you can probably have in the world.
It's like the stablest 6-figure job that
absolutely. And so any of your people, I don't know if you've ever tried to get a home loan, as soon as you tell the bank you're a doctor, they breathe a sigh of relief. They will offer you better rates, lower investment amount, lower percentages, better LVRs, no insurance, purely because you say you're a doctor. And it's one of the privileges, but obviously there's lots of negatives of being a doctor in terms of the debt and the working hours and the conditions, but it's an amazing career to have from a life perspective. And anyone who gets through med school and becomes a doctor, there's a few people who have said, I want to drop out of being a doctor. I would say, keep your registration, even if you're not working full time, that ability to say, hey, I'm a doctor, I have the ability to make 6 figures is really beneficial.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. When did you first start thinking that, running a side hustle or online business, or is StatDoctor your first one?
It's not my first one. I had one in second year of med school called Crash Me. So my partner at the time...
Sorry, called
Crash Me.
Crash Me, okay.
So my partner at the time was living in Melbourne doing her Melbourne medical school, and I was in Otago uni, and I had no money. And I really wanted to try and get overseas to go see her. So I had to come up with ways to try and make money, and I was quite a proficient and diligent medical student, and so I started doing one-on-one tutoring, and I tutored at the colleges, and I tutored, and I did well, but you're paying one-to-one, so you're paying for as many hours. And so I started doing group tutorial sessions, and I got more and more people, and my reputation spread. And then I started this Crash Me, which was a crash course. So I took the entirety of a Saturday for 8 hours. I started at 8 a.m. and we finished at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
And I taught the entirety of a syllabus in 8 hours. We had
to first year students?
To first year students, as many as would come. So there was one day I got 40 students paying $100 a session. I made $4,000 in 8 hours.
8 hours.
In 8 hours. Yeah. And it cost me nothing. I used the whiteboard markers from my college and my hall of residence. I rented a thing in the library, one of the rooms, and used the whiteboard there. And I already had all the knowledge, so I didn't have to do any extra work.
That was in person, right?
That was in person. So I did that maybe 8 times throughout my med school, made about $30,000 in one of the years, and over 2 years. And I spent it all on flights and traveled to Australia. So that was my first business. And at that time, after I'd tutored a lot of it, I tried to write a book. So Chem 191 and Physics 191 were my favorite subjects, and I did really well in them. And so I tried to write a book for each, and I ended up writing half of the book. And I had a friend who was really good at the anatomy and the physiology subject. So he wrote...
Sorry, wait. When you say book, do you mean like a book with tips?
It was like a workbook. We made workbooks. It was about 100 pages. And you could write on them. It had questions, it had detailed answers, it had exam questions, it had notes, had everything. So the idea was that you would buy this book for $15 and it would help you pass the exam. And we were trying to create one for all of the 7 subjects you needed to get into med school. So our health side year to get into med school. And we ended up so my friend wrote 2 of them, I wrote 2 of them. He sold a few, I sold a few, but we ended up kind of fizzling out when I moved to Christchurch. He went to Nelson, I think, for his 4th year. We went in Otago in the hustle and bustle of the first years. It became really hard to continue it. But it was interesting. It taught me a lot about business and trying to kind of expand and try not to be... Because as doctors, we're servicemen in that we make money based on how much time we can put into whatever we're doing. It's very hard to do anything else. Unless you run your own GP practice or run your own hospital or something like that, you basically
even then still, you still don't get much of the time and location freedom.
Definitely. And so I've always had this kind of want to have something on the side, because I didn't want to be a doctor for the money. I wanted to have something rolling on the side and be a doctor because I loved it. And so that's really what I'm
sure the patients would prefer a doctor who actually is at work and serving them because they actually want it versus just there because they need to fulfill some kind of hours or earn money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so 2 years ago, after I had so many monetary disputes and contract issues with my locum agency, I decided to be like, hey, look, is there a way I can not use you? And so then so it came out of a bit of spite, I reckon, the idea for StatDoctor. I did a couple of those accelerator incubator programs, which you could consider doing, which helps you kind of just get out of the doctor mindset and into a business mindset, which I found very useful, helps you validate your idea.
Well, but the only way to truly learn is just take the plunge and do it, right?
Definitely. And I'm actually...
This is my first actual business, if you want to call it, because the YouTube thing, it's not really a business. I mean, I do get AdSense money, but it's not really like, you don't really think about kind of the market and the audience. You just kind of post whatever you want and just let the algorithm do the job. So it's not really, I'm quite excited but daunted at the same time, because the more I look into it, like first you've got an idea and you're excited, right? And then you look into it, there's actually 10 times the amount of work that needs to be done. And then when you start doing it, there's like 10 more.
Yeah. And it always takes 10 times longer than you thought. And you need 10 times the help than you realize. And sometimes it takes more money than you can put into it.
Yeah.
And I've always, there's another interesting thing about one of my friends who is an entrepreneur doctor. And he always says every doctor who becomes an entrepreneur is a serial entrepreneur. And what that means is when you have one startup, you think about your next startup. And that's why you're saying you have this YouTube channel and then you've come up with your idea for this new business. I reckon in about 6 months, you'll have another idea. And so it's that idea, it's that constant want to either better yourself, better the world, come up with ideas. So at the moment, I'm working on another startup, which is, I'm going the opposite direction to you. I'm going to YouTube. So I'm creating a education platform on YouTube for doctors with the aim to try and bridge this gap. I reckon in medical school, you get really good teaching. And when you're on a training program, you get good teaching. But there's a gap for like PGY2 to when you get onto a training program for good teaching. And I think it's really important. So I do a lot of teaching around, I obviously love education. I do a lot of teaching with all the hospitals I go around to about like ECGs and gases and critical patients. And I do the same talk every time to every hospital I go to. And in the same way, I'm like, why am I doing that when I could create one YouTube video and say, hey, look, watch my YouTube video?
Yeah.
So look out for that. We're going to come one time.
Is that the sort of time frame like between PGY2 and people getting onto a training program? Is that the time frame where, I know we're getting back into the medical talk now, but is that the period of time where people kind of like, I see registrars, they just think around their own textbooks and just get home at night and just like read, what's that book called? Tallies and O'Connors.
Tallies and O'Connors, yeah.
Right. That's the time where they just kind of flick through textbooks and don't know what's going on and just like try to learn things, without a real kind of organized structure.
Yeah, you lose your structure. Yeah. So internship's really nice. You have rotations, you have structures, and that continues into your second because you got 2 years of internship. But as a PGY3, let's say you get a full-time job as an ED, HMO, wherever, whatever, New Zealand or Australia. There's no, like, they'll do some education with you once a week, maybe. But ED might not be what you want to do in the future. It might be this, it might be that. And the education might not be relevant to you. So you get kind of lost in this kind of flux of what exactly do I need to study or learn? And then your basic learning should always come from the patients you see, but then you don't know if you're doing things right, particularly if
that's when you come in, right?
Well, that's the aim. We'll see. It's a very early, I came up with the idea very recently, so less than 3 weeks ago. I haven't even made a video yet, but I've got lots of lecture slides and stuff that I've been using for years. So it shouldn't be too hard to just create some short videos, but we'll see.
I think it really takes the courage. Yeah. I think it really takes some courage to go from a stable sort of decent income to just taking the risk and taking the plunge.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it does. And that in itself, that courage is skill, because you have to know the knowledge and have the knowledge of when to do it and when not to. Everyone has millions of ideas in their lifetime. The ones you want to chase are so hard to know what the right ones are.
Yeah. One thing I was going to ask was, just before we finish off, how do you deal with the sort of the look from the people around you? Like, for example, my parents, they're outside, they're in the living room now, but like, I know that they don't believe in me. Like, when I started this YouTube thing, and I know that they don't believe in me, and I haven't even told them about my agency business idea yet, because I know that they're not going to believe in me. And I remember one day I was like, a few years down the line, I'll be making lots of money from YouTube, so it's fine. And they're just like, how can you make much money from this? You're going to make much money. And how do you deal with that?
It's an old school thinking, in that, I know people, and this includes my dad's been at the same job for 40 years. Yeah. He believes in being good to your company, going to work every day, climbing the ladder. He's now a manager we had a phenomenal upbringing, but that's how he was taught to be. Now
the world has changed, right?
What? The world has changed.
The world
completely.
has changed,
There's so many different
especially
ways.
since 2019, 2020.
Absolutely. There's so many different ways to make money. And even more than that, I think staying at the same place over and over again is actually negative for your life. Just like I was saying in the last video, if you stay at the same hospital for 45 years, you're going to be a worse doctor than someone who's been to 30 different hospitals in 45 years. You might think someone has more like safety and security, but in reality, who has the more better world experience? Who knows how to handle change better? Who's better in random circumstances? And so I think that you need to understand that your parents, like my parents, have an older school mindset. So if they don't believe in you, what does it matter? Why do you need them to believe in you? That's my first question.
I don't know, because I guess there's someone who's close to me and they've always supported me in other realms of life. And if I've got this aspiration and to do something great, then I kind of expect people around me to support me, which is interesting because they didn't say that they don't support me. I know that they don't believe in me, but very interesting because a couple of weeks ago I saw, because my dad watches YouTube on the TV, and I saw that he searches up my channel and he's been looking at how I'm doing. So I don't know what that means. Like, they don't believe in me, but they're wanting to see results. So I don't know how.
There's an interesting quote, and I don't know who it's from. And it's, don't take advice from someone who isn't in the position that you don't want to be in the future. So I don't want to be in the same position that my parents are in. So I wouldn't take their support or lack of encouragement or anything too harshly. If I knew someone who had built something similar to StatDoctor and had failed and then came up to me and said, hey, Anu, look, I had that same idea, it failed, then I would take that to heart. But in reality, your parents are there for love. They'll be there to love you no matter what. But your business ventures, your 20s and your 30s are your time to go make mistakes and to try and be successful. I feel your thinking in that maybe your parents aren't as supportive of your entrepreneurship and adventures, particularly like you, who's taken a gap year from mid school. So your parents are comparing this to, oh my gosh, he's leaving his stable job career as a future doctor to go make silly videos on YouTube. That comparison to them in their brain doesn't compare, right? And I obviously am still working as a doctor, so it's probably a little bit different. But when I first came up with these ideas to my parents, they weren't unsupportive, but they were definitely like, oh, really? Like, why don't you just try and become a surgeon? Like, why don't you try and get onto the program as soon as possible? And so it's an old school thinking, and so I don't take it to heart. I wouldn't be too stressed about it. From my point of view, I think that the world at the moment is so digitally orientated. Having a YouTube video is so important. You have access to so many people anytime you want. And that is so amazing. When I first came up with and I'll tell you this, when I first came up with StatDoctor, one of the things you can do is hire micro influencers to show your product to the world. And so when I first looked up, I was looking at doctors in Australia who had large viewership, and there's not many. There's not many. And so you'll be
you know Sebastian Pyrie.
I do know. Don't
get
me wrong.
His channel died, but anyway.
There are some, but there's not many who would be able to, I would want to pay to advertise it. So you'll be surprised with how much power you have just from having medical students and doctors and fitness people are an amazing market to have access to. And you do have that. So I would suggest, even if you think that you're not as happy doing 50 hours of YouTube, I would never let your YouTube kind of fire out. It's very strong and powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Since we talked a bit about, sort of medical students and doctors kind of aspect again, how do you deal with obviously in medicine there's a culture of just this one-way track of being a doctor. How do you deal with your colleagues? Sometimes, like, if you mention this idea to them, people just kind of, they kind of frown upon you in a way, especially some seniors. How do you deal with that? Or do you kind of just keep it to yourself and not talk about it?
It's almost, I reckon I could pick an age where over the age they're unsupportive and roll their eyes, And under the age, they're super supportive and say, yeah, go for it, good on you. And so most of my colleagues and nurses, when I explain the idea, they love it, they're encouraging, they even offer, say, what can I do? Oh, I know this friend, I'll get him to download or her to download your app. And it's so nice. And then recently, one of my consultants said, and so I'm obviously a registrar, I have a consultant who I work under, he's just retired, he's in his late 60s. And I told him the idea, and he just laughed and said, oh, this is going to set you back so many years in your surgical career. Because that's all he can think about. That's his life. And so you just can't take it to heart. And you realize everyone has to live their own life. And there will always be people who will support you and always people who won't support you. But if you think it's a good idea, go for it.
Right. Nice. Awesome. Thank you for the insight. And final question. Would you continue doing medicine if you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars from your side hustle?
Definitely. No matter how... I want to be a doctor not for the money. So no matter how financially successful anything else I do is, I would continue working this job. We had this chat recently in the hospital saying, if we won the lotto, would you stay doing this? And we're doing a really boring surgical ward round. And everyone else said they wouldn't be there except me. I said I probably would. Even if I won the lotto, I'd go have a holiday, I'd buy nice things, of course. But I really like being a doctor. It's really fun. And I think that if you aren't enjoying, and this goes to any junior doctor out there, if you're not enjoying your work like you are, don't necessarily think medicine is the problem. It's your situation that's the problem. Go work in a different hospital. Go work in a different country. Go travel for a bit. Relieve yourself of the burnout. And every hospital I've worked at, I felt differently. And this hospital I'm at currently is the happiest I've been as a doctor in a long time.
Awesome. Sometimes it's not just about yourself. You need to find the people, you need to find the environment, that all helps and it all comes together, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. So would you still do that full time or part time or, kind of cut it down or what?
I would probably still want to do it full time. Like I want to be a plastic surgeon. So even if this StatDoctor goes on and is very successful, I will still apply for plastics training program. I will still go through that grind and become a plastic surgeon at the other end. What I do once I get there in terms of hours work might be different, but I will still definitely work.
Completely. No, see, that's exactly the kind of doctor that we need in the medical workforce. Yeah. And that's what I want to be as well. Like I've only done 1 year of a year and a half of clinical component of my training, and I absolutely loved it.
Nice.
And this whole gap year, it's only because I'm an undergrad, I've got time to take a year out to explore something else. And
definitely.
So, why not? But I'm definitely coming back to medicine. There's no doubt in that. So,
yeah.
Awesome. Look, Anu, thank you so much for this.
You're welcome.
All inspiring conversation. I learned a lot from you. And are there any last words from you?
No, I'm always happy to be in contact with anyone who wants to know more about my journey or what I'm doing or has any questions about being a doctor or a medical student. I think that having someone a little bit older to kind of explain what the future's like is helpful. So I'm open to all your viewers. I'll give you my email. You probably have my email. Tell them all on Facebook. Just click their message.
I'll drop your email down in the link in the description below, so you guys can go and hit him up if you guys got any questions. Thank you guys for watching, and if you enjoy this video, be sure to click the like button and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And otherwise, stay fit, stay strong, stay positive, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace. Cool.